they were all just regular people trying to make a living in one of the hardest ways possible, and one of the most difficult areas. I mean, there's not any other way to really make a living out here. And those people worked hard without a lot of amenities. And I just connect to that and love the area and love what they did, and I just don't want it to die.
Welcome to It's Worth Mentioning, a podcast about local history. I'm your host, Rhett Nelson. Got an email just a few weeks ago from a viewer, sent in a tip for us. I'd like to read a portion of that email to you. She says, "Hello, my name is Kelly Christensen. I thought you might be interested in doing a story on Custer, Idaho. Yes, it is a well-known local favorite location, but it is under new management now. The woman that has taken over Custer has 7 generations of family ties to that land. Her great-great-grandfather was elected as the first sheriff of Lemhi County. This was back when Idaho was still a territory, and that region was still considered Lemhi County." Well, I responded to Kelly and got some more information. Custer, Idaho is an old mining town that existed between 1879 and 1910. It sits between Stanley and Chalice. And this woman that she speaks of, who has 7 generations of people tied to this land, her name is Diane Davidson. She is the manager of the land of the Yankee Fork Historical Association. That's the nonprofit that maintains this old town site in conjunction with the U.S. Forest Service in the state of Idaho. I made a trip out to Custer, spoke with Diane Davidson on site. So today's podcast is a little bit different. We are on location in Custer, Idaho, and we got into a lot in our conversation. We talked about the rise and fall of this short-lived town site, what led to its formation initially, what daily life was like, why it folded. We talked about some of the notable people who were involved in the formation and in the daily life of this community. And then we talk about its legacy and why it remains a special place in Diane Davidson's heart, who, like we said, has many generations of her family tied to this place. Excited to show this conversation to you here in just a moment. But first, be sure and find our show on the East Idaho News YouTube channel. It's Worth Mentioning. Follow our show. It posts weekly on Sunday evenings. We're also available in audio format now. So be sure and find us, follow our show. Leave us a positive review if you can, so that we can get in front of more eyeballs and have more viewers and fans interacting with us. And if you have a tip or a topic you'd like us to explore, shoot us an email. My email is rett@eastidahonews.com. Now here's my conversation with Diane Davidson on location in Custer, Idaho.
This is the town site of Custer. Mm-hmm. It's now a ghost town.
Yeah.
But it was a mining town back in the day.
Yep.
This place was incorporated in 1879 and folded in 1910. So it had about a 30-year lifespan.
Yeah.
Rose and peaked and declined in a period of just 3 decades. So a very short lifespan, but there was a lot that happened during that time, and I want to get into that with you here a little bit. Let me start, first of all, though, with the name, Custer. How did it get its name?
Well, that's after General Custer. He had passed just a few months before they discovered the vein of gold on the mountainside. And so they named it after him to honor him. So there was a big southern influence here. Yeah.
A lot of people who lived here were from the south?
I think so. I think it was a pretty eclectic mix of people from all over.
Okay.
But I think there were quite a few from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, as we know today, the Chalice area, Custer, by the way, sits right halfway between Chalice and Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
We're about an hour south of Chalice. And, you know, this area today is still known as being rich in mineral deposits, and people are mining, you know, the minerals today.
Yeah.
And back then, it was gold that brought people here. And so that was kind of the initial draw. But in 1879, what was the story that behind how this city became incorporated?
Okay, well, a few years before that, like I said earlier, the gold vein was discovered just behind us here, and they got financial backing from a company to come out here and build a mill. And so then they needed property to house workers. And Samuel Hughes had a gold claim along the Yankee Fork here. He owned the town site basically, and he broke it into plots, separated it into plots, and sold them off for the town site, for home sites and business sites.
Samuel Hughes had an interesting tactic when he was plotting this place out, which we'll get to here later in the conversation. I want to talk about that because it's kind of interesting what he did here. He was a prominent citizen in the beginnings of this town. At its peak, this place had 300 people, thereabouts.
1890 census.
And, obviously it was the mining operation that was the economic driving force, but what was daily life here like?
I think at first it was tent city, and that was mostly, where there's gold, there's going to come miners, and where there's miners, there's going to be whiskey and women. So town first was pretty rough. It consisted of saloons mostly, and housing for the workers and miners. And then eventually, more married women and families came to town. There was a section of town where the Chinese lived and did laundry and stuff. And eventually, when the families came, they built a school. You could see all the workers walk up to the mill every morning from their lanterns, the light of their lanterns in the dark.
Probably much like any other town.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah,
with
much like any other town.
Schools and shops and a blacksmith and
a blacksmith shop.
The nightlife. There were saloons, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the Chinese that lived here. So there was, people are familiar that, the Chinese immigrated to this country in the late 1800s looking for work. But anything you want to say about that point as to how the Chinese came here or were brought here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it mostly started with the gold rush in California, and they would bring them on ships and basically use them as slaves, either prostitution or mining. And once they were here, they had to earn a living one way or another, so they followed the gold rush from state to state and gold mining town to gold mining town and wherever they can make their money.
What was you mentioned they had a baseball team here?
Yeah.
At one point.
Yeah, they had a baseball team.
So that was kind of one of the town extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was an active, it was more than just the mine. Like people had lives here.
Yeah.
And were part of the community and did things. From all the stories that you've read over the years, do you have a favorite one of something that happened here?
And there was a man that came into town, and he had a wife, and she was the only woman here that was counted because she wasn't a prostitute. And one day, the stagecoach comes into town, and lo and behold, another woman got off the stagecoach. And that woman that was here before saw her out her window and just went running, and they embraced each other because she hadn't seen another woman that she could be friends with in a long time. So they were instantly friends.
Yeah, instant connection.
Yeah.
Someone just like me.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So you had a generation of people that probably grew up here.
Yeah.
30 years is enough to come of age and get married and start a family. But by 1910, the town folded. And what was the cause of that?
Well, gold prices dropped, and they didn't have financial backing for the mill any longer, and it just the cost outweighed the gain that they would get from the gold.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And so the town folded and people went elsewhere.
yeah.
And I want to get into some of the specific people and how they came here and where they ended up. You have deep family ties. 7 generations of your family are tied here.
Yeah.
In fact, your great-great-grandfather, John Ramey, was among the people who helped settle this town. Tell me about John Ramey. So he was born in Kentucky,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And then how did he end up in, of all places, Idaho?
Well, I'm not sure, but he was chasing gold. And so he went to California first. And he did end up in Arizona for a while in the Superstition Mountains, looking, I think it's for the Lost Packer mine or some lost mine where there was supposed to be a bunch of hidden gold. And he ended up here in Idaho, in the Chalice Belt of Idaho, and owned some mining claims north of here. And that's where he met his wife. And they had children and eventually moved here before the town of Custer was established. They were living in a cabin near the where the West Fork and the Yankee Fork merged together. Eventually his kids went to school here, and he was the gold man in town, which he was just a trusted individual that went around to all the mines around here and gathered up the gold and took it to be sold. And he was eventually elected the sheriff in town. And he had a couple, other claims in other areas, so he did spend a lot of time traveling. But his family was here or in the Chalice area going to school.
When he first came to Idaho, he didn't necessarily know anything about Custer.
No.
That was a place he learned about when he got here.
Yeah.
Do you recall how he was introduced to this place?
I don't.
But
Like the
eventually,
grapevine.
he does come here.
Yes.
And like you said, he was elected sheriff. Now,
Yeah.
that wasn't a position that he sought.
No.
The people nominated him because they trusted him. And you don't know how long he served as sheriff here,
No, I'm not sure.
but he was elected and served for a time. Yeah. In that daily capacity as sheriff, what were the main types of encounters that he had with people in just trying to enforce the law?
I imagine there were probably some shootouts. There were probably, some fights over claim jumpers, over land, and gold, whiskey, women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he probably had an interesting career.
In the accounts that you've read about John Ramey, is there a story about him as sheriff that stands out to you?
Well, one time the sheriff and his friend were taking gold to Salt Lake City, and they got approached by a robber, and the robber told him not to look. He didn't want him to see his face. And my great-great-grandpa's friend that was with him turned around and looked at him, and so he got shot, and my grandpa didn't. Thank goodness.
Now, John also, like you said, he had a family. He had met his wife in Chalice, right?
Closer to Ledor.
Oh, Ledor.
Yep.
Ledor, okay.
Which is outside of Chalice. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
By the way, just interesting historical note. At that time, Idaho was not a state,
Right.
and Custer, which is today part of Custer County, at that time was part of Lemhi County.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the boundaries of the organization of different counties was different at the
Yeah.
time. But okay, so they met in Ledor. They come here to Custer, and they raise a family here, right? How many
Yeah.
kids did they have?
I believe there were 4 or 5.
And what was his wife's name?
Maggie.
Maggie.
Yeah.
One of their kids was it Lucas?
Lewis.
Lewis
Yep.
Ramey.
Yeah.
What do you know about Lewis?
So he followed his father's footsteps, and he was a trusted individual and went on to, my great-great-grandpa owned the Rabbit's Foot mine, and Lewis ended up taking that over and actually building it to be quite a profitable mine. And when he was ready to propose to his wife, he sent gold and a drawing of what he wanted the wedding ring to look like back to Tiffany's of New York and had them make the ring and send it back.
You know, we were talking earlier about how a generation of kids grew up here. The Ramies were one of them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
John and Maggie Ramey had 4 or 5 kids, like you said. Do you know much about the others that they had?
A little bit, and there's historical records about it. Just remembering it all is
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Another prominent individual in this town, and you mentioned his name earlier when we were talking about how this town was incorporated. His name was Samuel Hughes.
Yeah.
Tell me about him. Who was he?
So he was an attorney, I believe from back east, and he had come to this area, the Yankee Fork area, and he had bought up a claim along the Yankee Fork River. And after they discovered the gold and were getting the General Custer stamp mill and everything up and running, he decided to divide up his gold claim into plots and sell it to build the town of Custer on.
And like I mentioned earlier, he had an interesting tactic to, you know, during the court proceedings when they were trying to make this place an actual town as an incorporated city, he did something with the people to keep them in good spirits.
Yeah, yeah.
So what did he do?
He'd break for drink time. It was time to relax and have a break, and he said it kept everybody in good spirits through the rest of the proceedings.
But beyond the founding of Custer, you know, like you mentioned, Samuel was an attorney. Did he have any interesting cases he was working on when he was here?
I don't know. That'd be fun to delve into. No, but he did have a gold claim at Holman Creek named after him.
Okay.
And he would ride his horse down there and work his claim. He didn't really want to have much to do with law or anything anymore. Very educated man, very smart, and just came out here to live and be in the middle of nowhere. And so he did prefer to, you know, be working his claim. And he would ride his horse there and then ride it back home because he did live in Custer, right in town. And he, if he'd fall asleep or be too drunk to get home, his horse would always bring him home. And then one night he fell over on his horse, and his head got caught in some bushes, and it hurt his neck quite badly to where he couldn't hold it up. And so after that, he was known to go around town with a branch on his shoulder in a V to hold his neck up. Quite the guy.
Yeah. We got to talk about the female population because, as you said, there were so few of them. But there was one woman in this town who was well known.
Yeah.
Her name was Lizzie King, and she worked in the brothel. She was a prostitute, but she also worked in the dance hall.
Yeah.
And kind of was an entertainer. Tell me about Lizzie.
Okay. Lizzie came from England, and she made it to California with the gold rush, and she did get married there. She was probably a prostitute back in California, and possibly Montana. There's not a lot known about her, but she did make it to Custer with her first husband, and she owned the dance hall. She had saved enough money to own the dance hall, and she had employees, other women, and it was interesting because there was quite the scandal around Lizzie. Her first husband was shot, and this was at the same time my grandfather was the sheriff, so I'm not sure what he had to, what his title where it came into play with all this, but Lizzie's first husband was shot because of a business deal that went bad. And then not too long after that, Lizzie left town and went to Montana, where she used to work, to gain some more employees for her dance hall. And when she came back, Mr. Hawthorne was with her, and they seemed to be courting, and they were married soon after, and they were both shot, presumably by another a jealous lover or a jealous man, because he was found years later in his cabin dead with a locket in his hand with a picture of Lizzie.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And Lizzie was eventually buried on Boot Hill between both of these men.
Yeah.
Because of her profession,
Yes.
she was considered a lowlife.
Yeah.
They didn't want to be around her.
Yep.
So they buried her in a secluded area.
Yep. Up here in Boot Hill. That's where Lizzie lies, in between two lovers.
But what's the reason that you, I don't know if admiration is the word, you have a lot of respect for Lizzie and her story.
Yeah.
What do you like about her?
You know, I like telling Lizzie's story because it was a part of life back in the day, and it was a way for women to make money when they weren't married. It was the only way to make money. It wasn't the most glamorous life, and a lot of them, there was a lot of hardships, a lot of drinking, a lot of opium use, because they didn't like what they were doing, but were stuck as women trying to make their life in gold towns out west, and that was what won the West, I guess. The women, the miners, women and whiskey is what settled this place. So I have a lot of respect for them coming out here and being brave and being first and doing what they did to make some money to take care of themselves.
So, like we mentioned earlier, this town folded in 1910 and all of the people eventually left. We know what happened to Lizzie. What ever happened to John Ramey?
He had other claims, and he was a businessman, so he had a few other things to do. But him and his wife, Maggie, moved to Salmon and lived the rest of their life there. And they're both buried in the Salmon Cemetery.
What about Samuel Hughes?
You know, I think Sammy died here. I think he's buried in the Bonanza Cemetery, if I'm not mistaken.
Diane, Custer, it folds and it kind of sits for a time.
Yeah.
It's just abandoned. And then in the 1940s, another branch of your family ends up moving here.
Yeah.
The McGowans.
Yeah.
So tell me, first of all, how are you related to the McGowans?
So my great-great-grandpa, John Ramey, his granddaughter married a McGowan.
Okay.
And these are, some of the older families that settled the area, the McGowans. And the McGowans were a very prominent family in the area.
The McGowan family, years later, ends up coming back after this town had sat vacant for, at that point, would have been 30 years or so. Why did the McGowans come back and live here?
Well, they came in the summer. The gold dredge was running then. And Tough McGowan, he was the gold man for the gold dredge, kind of following in family's footsteps, right? And so his job was to get on to the gold dredge every week, and he would gather up the gold and then take it and to the dredge camp to get refined into gold bars. And so in the summer, they lived out here. The dredge lots of times didn't work in the winter because it was too cold, but he would move his whole family out here along with other families from the area. They would live in the old dwellings, the old buildings in the summer and make a living. Sometimes there were gold panners too, and they made a living from the gold dredge and spent their summers running around the mountains here. And then they, kind of came Tough and Edna McGowan played a vital role in preserving the town's artifacts and history. And they just knew everything about the families that lived here and started gathering up a lot of the important artifacts and storing them in the buildings here so they were protected. And eventually, Tough McGowan sold the town to the Forest Service for, I think, $12,000. Some crazy low amount. And that's when the Forest Service took over. And buildings, everything remained vacant. Every once in a while, they'd have some squatters move into the cabins and stuff. And the Forest Service would, had trouble with that, quite a bit of trouble with that. And eventually they burned some of the buildings down to keep people from living in them. And then families from the town of Custer got together, the McGowns mostly, and started an association that eventually took over management of the town, along with the Forest Service and Idaho State Parks, to bring in tourism and to interpret the history of the town.
I have to ask, so his name was Tuff, Tuff.
Yeah,
That's a nickname.
yeah.
What was his actual name?
Oh my goodness.
Don't recall off the top of your head?
No, I don't.
Okay. How did he get the nickname Tuff?
Oh, I'm not sure, but I'm sure a family member remembers that one.
Okay. All right. But just putting their trip back here in the 40s in context a little bit. So obviously this is World War II era. The country's at war. We're just getting out of the Great Depression. So there's a lot of families in kind of dire straits financially.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that his family history knowledge of the fact that they used to live here and there was gold was probably a huge draw
Yeah.
for him. Let's go here and get some gold and improve our financial situation a little bit.
Yeah.
But they end up staying here for over 2 decades
Yeah.
before eventually selling it, like you said, to the U.S. Forest Service.
Yeah.
And and since then, it's been a historic site. How long have you been involved in helping to maintain this place?
Just a year. This last summer was my first year,
Okay.
but I've been coming up here every summer of my whole life. I've hardly missed a summer.
And like we mentioned, your ancestral ties are here.
Yeah.
So you are personally connected to this place.
Yeah.
You've grown up hearing these stories and this history. Aside from the fact that ancestral ties, like what is it about this place that keeps you coming back year after year?
It feels like home. I spent a lot of my summers here, so when we were done on the ranch working cattle, my parents would send me off with my grandma and grandpa, my dad's mom and dad, and my grandma was a Ramey, and she was wanting to write a book about her history, and so she was writing about John Ramey and Louis Ramey, and so we would get in their RV and come out here and come camping, and we would visit family in town, lots of McGowans and Pivas and Bradburys. We'd go visiting, and then she'd go to the courthouse, and my sister and I and my cousin would play on the courthouse lawn while she was doing research. And then, of course, we would interact with all these families, and I was just steeped in the history of this area. And after watching about 12 years of mismanagement, I decided I really wanted to be a part of it, and I was waiting for that moment, and it came up last spring, and I feel like I'm home and want to, make sure the stories are heard, and that this place doesn't die, and that the Forest Service and, the communication and the partnership with all of us keeps the buildings up and keeps everything in good shape so we can continue to tell the stories, because I think this is a very big part of Idaho's history. There were a lot of people back here in the day. Custer was not the only ghost town here. There was Bonanza, there was the Lucky Boy mines. I mean, there were hundreds of people out here, and there's mines within a stone's throw distance that you can look up on the hillside and see mining holes and cabins all over here. And I truly believe this area settled Idaho. And, this is the heart of Idaho. The mining and the hard work and the, miners, gold, women, and whiskey settled Idaho.
Yes. That leads into my other question, and you may have just answered it. But you talked about you want to tell these stories so that they're not forgotten. Why is this place, why should people remember it? The people who lived here weren't necessarily well-known people. No. Why is it so important, in your opinion, for this place to be remembered?
Yeah. oh, it's my heritage. It's where I came from. And I always think you should, remember or go back to where you came from. And they were all just regular people trying to make a living in one of the hardest ways possible, and one of the most difficult areas. I mean, there's not any other way to really make a living out here unless there was gold here. And those people worked hard without a lot of amenities. And I just connect to that and love the area and love what they did, and I just don't want it to die.